7 minutes after 5 o'clock on News Talk 1440 Keys. I am Eric Von Wade. Always a pleasure to have you with us. So much going on today. And I tell you, you're going to have to stay quick with us here. But there's a segment I've really been looking forward to. A subject that is, I hate to say this, because usually as a talk show host, we're supposed to know everything about everything, right? But I really did not understand the depth of belief system that went on with Scientology until we started focusing on this over the last week or so. In fact, it was just a few months back when we did our Everything You Wanted to Know About Religions But Were Afraid to Ask. We didn't have anything on Scientology, and I don't know why it skipped my mind, but it was certainly fascinating when I started talking with my producer, Jay James, who'd done a lot of research into this in the past as Tom Cruise was making news again for more odd comments about Scientology. And the belief system, to me, seems so alien to anything I would have imagined, and that term fits fairly well as far as I understand it, that I wanted to find out more about this. And so I wanted to get all sides and all opinions, but the first guest that we have is somebody who has looked into Scientology with a very detailed eye and has put himself right in the midst of a lot of discussions on Scientology. And I want to welcome on my special guest. He's an Emmy Award-winning journalist and critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker. And Mark, great to have you on the Eric Von Wade Show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, I'm glad to talk with you. And I have been watching some video that you have shot in the past when following the issues of Scientology. And I have so many questions. I'm not quite sure where to begin on this. But really, I've been a little startled about what I've come to hear about the belief systems of Scientology. Now, in a nutshell, and this is, I know, a tough question, can you give us kind of the core beliefs of Scientology?
Well, I can, and it's a little confusing because this is one of the problems with the group. Their core beliefs aren't known to the majority of the members of the group because you have to go through stages in Scientology. You have to go through these increasingly expensive courses to reach the upper-level, top-secret levels, which are called operating Phaeton levels, or OT levels. And that's when you find out what it's really all about. So you can talk to low-level Scientologists and talk to them a little bit about this mythology, and they'll say, oh, that has nothing to do with Scientology. But it's all leading to this. Once you reach OT3, as people who watched South Park will recognize, when you reach OT3, you discover that 75 million years ago, Earth was known as Tigiak and was ruled over by the evil overlord Xenu, who stuffed us all into volcanoes and blew us up with hydrogen bombs far more powerful than those we have today. Now that explosion is the source of all of our problems, because when we blew up, tiny fragments of the people were kind of fused together, and they became what are called body Phaetons, or BTs, and they cover us. We are covered with these invisible dead space aliens, these clusters of aliens. And in the upper-level Scientology courses, you are going to be sitting alone in a room, well, sometimes with an auditor. On some levels, you're sitting alone, holding on to the E-meter, which is a device that the Scientologists use. And you're going to try to locate these BTs and explain to them, it's okay, you're confused, you were blown up by Xenu millions of years ago, you can go now. And you get rid of all these BTs, and then you can achieve almost godlike abilities. Now, I know that's a lot to absorb. But in Scientology, from the moment you get in, you are being slowly indoctrinated with each step of the way until when you reach these levels, you either buy into everything that they tell you, and you go along and say, well, of course, blew us up in a volcano, and I got to get rid of these BTs.
Right.
Or you say, what? And quietly leave and hopefully never mention it again. And if you do, if you keep your mouth shut, you're safe. If you speak out, they'll go after you.
And this is really kind of the most frightening aspect of this, And I'm sure that you will be able to share with us some commentary that they would have as rebuttals, a Scientologist. But it seems to me, and I don't mean to be intentionally offensive, but by all that I can see, this seems to be very cultish. I mean, the belief system follows this intricate, detailed standard of what you find in a lot of cults, not to mention the fact that there seems to be very contradictory evidence that any of this could possibly be. And I say, I'm sure there's people could say that same thing as agnostics or as atheists about Christianity or Judaism for that matter. But at the very least, I mean, history records and recognizes there was a man named Jesus Christ. And, there were historical facts to back some of this up. Is there any evidence that they point to back any of this up?
Well, no, there have never been any actual studies to prove or disprove any of L. Ron Hubbard's claims. In the 50s, early 50s, a group of Scientologists decided they were going to do a controlled experiment to prove some of these things, and they couldn't prove it. So L. Ron Hubbard said, well, okay, that's the end of these type of studies. How dare you? And he booted those people out and declared them suppressive persons, or those are the enemies. When you're in Scientology and Hubbard didn't like you, you became an SP, or suppressive person. And those people could be attacked viciously. Hubbard said that it was, let me read right from his fair game policy, where he says these people can be lied, tricked, sued, or destroyed. It is astonishing the lengths that they will go to attack somebody that they believe to be the enemy.
And let me ask you this. Again, my special guest, again, Emmy Award-winning journalist and critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker, is there any examples that we see or that we know of where people have been targeted by Scientology?
Well, absolutely. There have been some very famous cases. Paulette Cooper was the first woman to write a book critical of Scientology back in the 70s, called The Scandal of Scientology. They set out to destroy her with several covert operations, one of them called Operation Freakout. They were trying to essentially either send her to prison or send her to a mental institution or send her to her death. And the way Scientology used to work when Hubbard was in charge, they used to have their own intelligence agency, and by the way, they still do. They called it at that time the Guardian's Office. And they would have these Scientologists running dirty trick campaigns against the enemies. And in Paulette Cooper's case, they set her up with phony bomb threats against the UN and against Henry Kissinger. They got some of her stationery, and they sent in bomb threats with her fingerprints on the paper. And she was arrested, and she was facing trial. She was a journalist at the time. She lost all of her jobs. No one would hire her with this notoriety. She lost all of her friends. Her fiancé dumped her. She only had one friend that she could turn to during this time, and she would be crying on his shoulder about the state of affairs, and that she'd spent all of her money on attorneys, so she didn't know what was happening. And this guy later turned out to be a Scientologist, and he was writing up detailed notes every night. She's about to crack. I think she's about to commit suicide. Isn't this great?
Oh my gosh.
And it was only when the FBI raided Scientology's headquarters in Washington and L.A., and they took boxes and boxes of tens of thousands of documents, that they uncovered the written notes about all of these covert operations. There they were detailed, and at that point, L. Ron Hubbard had everybody put every little step in writing. So these people would have to be writing up it. Well, we tapped 3 phone lines today, and we tapped 5 this week. Everything was very stats-driven, so it was all written out, and it was just like a boon for the FBI. And they were able to send L. Ron Hubbard's wife, Mary Sue, and 10 other top Scientology officials to prison at that time. Because also they uncovered that the Scientologists had run a covert campaign attacking the U.S. government. They had actually put Scientologists into the FBI and the IRS and other government agencies, as low-level employees, secretaries and whatnot, and then at night they would go in after office hours and they would be stealing documents and sending them back to, and they bugged the IRS offices so they could listen in on meetings on Scientology's tax-exempt status.
My goodness.
This was all uncovered in the raids, and these top officials went to prison for this. That was called Operation Snow White, and it's worth doing a Google on that because it's all fascinating. There's so much skullduggery inside that operation.
Now, I've got two questions for you one we may have to wait till after this moment of bonus promotional materials to get to, but well, let me start with the biggest question, and I may be jumping around, but the overall question that comes to my mind in hearing all of this stuff is, how do you get people to believe this in the numbers that seem to be flocking to this, to Scientology? Because, I mean, granted, and I say this with all sensitivity, but Hollywood types are not known for their intellectual prowess necessarily, and yet still you would think that some of this stuff would send up a red flag in what people are expected to believe, even at the higher, especially at the higher levels. And secondly, why is it that more people don't know? Is it simply because of the time frame? There's a generation that's missed out on this. Was there a lot of coverage on Operation Snow White when it first happened? Why aren't people more aware of what the history of Scientology, the recent history of Scientology, is all about? And I'll let you tell me about that in just a second, okay?
Very good.
Those are two questions out of many that I have. And I find this to be a fascinating subject, and I hope that you're paying attention to this, because it seems to me now, especially in entertainment, that this is the religion of choice, Scientology, and yet there is so much that so many don't know. So we're trying to talk with this, and we are trying to give fair opportunity for both sides. We put a contact into Scientology sources for someone to talk with us. We have not received a return phone call. We do have with us now, we'll be back in just a moment, with Emmy Award-winning journalist and critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker.
I mean, I'm here. What are you afraid of? What am I afraid of? What? You answer my question.
Well, there's plenty to be afraid of.
You haven't answered my question yet. What are you afraid of?
I'm not afraid.
Good to have you back with us. It's the Eric Von Wade Show. That was a little audio from some video taken by my special guest, Mark Bunker, as he was being accosted verbally, and I would say an attempt to physically intimidate our special guest as well by some Scientologists. And we are talking with an Emmy Award-winning journalist and critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker. And Mark, thanks again for hanging in there.
Well, thank you, Eric.
In a little bit, I want to talk more about some of these encounters that I've seen, because it is very militant. It reminds me of some of these protesters at World Bank meetings and so forth, the behavior of what we had seen. But before we get back to this, just talking, you've encapsulated a basic belief system of Scientology as you move through the levels that you're required, as I understand, required to pay money to move up through.
Enormous amounts of money.
And I want to get to that too. But the big question that I'm sure is got to be rattling around in somebody else's mind besides me, how do they get so many people to believe this stuff?
Well, L. Ron Hubbard was a genius. He was an evil genius. What he was able to do was create a mind control factory inside Scientology. When you meet Scientology in its various forms, it seems innocent and helpful. You may bump into somebody on the street offering you a personality test. You may go to a seminar to teach you how to run your business better as a chiropractor or a dentist. You may be in need of help getting off of drugs. They have these various ways of recruiting people into Scientology. These are all essentially front groups to introduce you to Scientology, and they will find something that is bothering you at the moment. They call it finding your ruin. If you're having problems with your wife or your kids or at work, they'll say, we have a course for that. We can help you with that. You may join up to take an introductory course, and you start to realize, I guess I learned something here, and that was helpful. And here's one of the genius aspects of Hubbard. At the end of each one of these courses, you have to write up your wins. what you got from the course. So at the end of a communication course, you are forced to sit down and say, well, I learned how to communicate better by this, this, and this. So if you're ever upset in Scientology and you say, I want to leave, they can pull out all these wins from your folder and say, look at this. Look at all the success you've had. How can you possibly walk away from this? And so you are being drawn into this, surrounded by people who are happy and smiling and all talking about their successes. And they're not allowed to say anything negative in Scientology. There's a policy called knowledge reports. If a Scientologist hears another Scientologist speak poorly or do something that they consider out ethics, which is anything that's opposed to Scientology that might hurt Scientology, that Scientologist in good standing has to write up a knowledge report or a KR and report the bad Scientologist to the leadership. And then that Scientologist gets in trouble, gets hauled in front of an ethics committee, and gets grilled, gets put on the e-meter, and gets sec-checked. They have these security checks where they're listing all of these things that you may have done. Have you ever had a negative thought about L. Ron Hubbard? And they're watching the e-meter, which is kind of a crude lie detector, and they're seeing the needle move to see if, oh, wait a minute, what did you think about L. Ron Hubbard? And you're battered by this.
Well, this seems to be, classic, I hate to use the word brainwashing, but it is that kind of conditioning that whether it's a concentration camp or whether this is, some Stalinist regime, these are the same sorts of tactics that pressure people into accepting someone else's reality.
Right, and there's lots of thought-stopping techniques. You don't want a KR written about you, so you'll stop yourself if you're having a negative thought about L. Ron Hubbard, and you won't speak out, and you find yourself getting sucked in farther and farther. And the courses start off being, reasonably inexpensive, but then they start getting more and more expensive. All the while, they're getting you to slowly agree to Scientology concepts, this, that, and the other thing, until you get to the bigger things that are hard to swallow. They're not telling you that stuff up front. They're conditioning you to be prepared for the bigger stuff.
Okay, and let me ask this now. These courses, these classes, helping people kick drug habits or improve their business operations, are these classes worthy? Do they seem to actually offer a benefit?
Well, there can be some benefit, but there's also drawbacks. For instance, I interviewed a couple dentists in Chicago a few years back, and they explained to me how they got in through a WISE management course. WISE is the World Institute of Scientology Enterprises. Because dentists and chiropractors apparently don't get any training in how to run an office when they're learning their trade.
Sure.
I guess doctors, as part of their education, do.
Okay.
But dentists don't. So they are a prime target for these market seminars. So they'll learn how to make more money, but they'll learn to do unethical things, like hard pressure customers to get things that perhaps they didn't need done.
Okay, so I understand where you're coming from on some of this. This is fascinating, Joey. Can you hang with us for a little bit longer?
Sure.
I tell you, there's so much to ask about, and we've had people that wanted to know more about this fair game policy and what that includes. We'll talk to you about that as well. Scientology. We're speaking with Emmy Award-winning journalist Mark Bunker. I'm Eric Von Wade. It's 5:30.
Look at it this way. If a Scientologist is a street sweeper, it is his responsibility to apply Scientology to his zone and whoever he may interact with. And no, it's not an option, not if he's a real Scientologist. And when his head hits the pillow each night, he'd better know he did all he could.
Good to have you back with us. That was a quote from David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology. And it's a fascinating subject. I've been wanting to find out more about this, and we have with us now a special guest, Emmy Award-winning journalist and critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker. Mark, thank you for hanging in there.
My pleasure.
And just looking at some of the things, again, all of this stuff is for the most part new to me. I'd heard of Scientology. I knew that Tom Cruise and a number of other Hollywood actors and actresses were becoming Scientologists, but I had no idea the belief system. And we have a caller in a sec. We're going to go to in just a second. But again, if you could, well, in fact, you know what? We should take this call because we have a woman that is at least communicated to my producer that she doesn't think you're telling the truth about Scientology.
Fair enough.
And so we're going to go. Let me make sure who we have up here. We're going through computer systems for all this stuff now, which is slowing me down. I believe her name is Pat, and we'll welcome her on. Pat, good to have you on the Eric Von Wade Show.
Yeah. Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for getting in, Pat. If we could, and I know that this is, from what I'm gauging here, you feel pretty passionate about trying to make some corrections. I'd like to hear a point-counterpoint between the two of you if we
Well,
if
could
we
I
do
make
it.
I mean, he's been going on and on
Sure.
for a while.
Sure.
So if I could just as a point, just point out one thing.
Okay.
If 1.1% of what Mr. Bunker has been saying for the past, half an hour or whatever were true, you are right. There would not be this many people in Scientology. There are millions of people in Scientology and millions who've been helped by Scientology and Scientologists who've come off drugs and are living a drug-free life, okay?
Okay.
And are not necessarily Scientologists either, but who will tell you passionately that they were in the grips of drugs and were dying from drugs, and because of the technology that Mr. Hubbard developed, are now drug-free, living ethical, good lives. Mr. Bunker also told a major, big lie about knowledge reports and about ethics, okay? And these things are things that anybody can pick up a book in Scientology and recognize that what he just said was absolutely a lie, that it was just about if it's something against Scientology. And that's the kind of thing that Mr. Bunker, they put out there, and it's just not true. Scientology is about truth. I have been a Scientologist since 1979. And by the way, I've had Mr. Bunker in my face with his camera. He was the one harassing me and harassing Scientologists for weeks on end in Clearwater until his money dried up and he had to leave. Okay? So,
Well,
in terms of harassment, in terms of lying, in terms of, the kinds of things that he's saying on the air, I think it's despicable. It's, and millions of people will disagree with him.
By the way, I believe this is Pat Harney. Is that correct, Pat?
I'm sorry?
Are you Pat Harney?
Harney. Harney.
Yeah, she's the PR person for the Church of Scientology, and it's nice to talk to you, Pat.
Well,
can I ask Pat? What about Operation Snow White?
I actually would like to speak with the person that's running the program.
Well, yeah, but you said that I told lies. Was Operation Snow White a lie?
Bunker, that there were Scientologists who went over the edge, and that was back in the 70s, and that David Miscavige and many of the current management addressed that, and those people were addressed with Scientology.
It's always somebody taking the fall.
And with our ethics techniques, okay? This is now 2007, all right? So this. There are thousands, millions of people who've been helped with Scientology through our anti-drug program, through our human rights program, through our volunteer minister program, by the Scientology counseling that we do every day. Why, thousands of people come to Clearwater to better their lives, can tell you about better marriages, can tell you about better family life.
Certainly. Can I interject, please, Pat? I just wanted to, and I appreciate, certainly the different viewpoints that both of you are presenting. As far as Mr. Bunker's rendition of the belief system of Scientology, and certainly I think there was some acknowledgement that some of these programs, even by his account, helped people.
He went on to denigrate it.
But let me ask this, and this is what I'm interested in. Was there an accurate rendition of the belief system about...
I did not hear that.
Okay.
I did not hear that.
I talked about Xenu and the space aliens.
What Scientology believes in? Oh, please.
So Xenu has nothing
tired.
to do with OT3?
You know what? I have never heard any of that until you guys started putting it there.
So you're not an OT3?
Is about... Excuse me, Mr. Eric, can I tell you what my beliefs are since I've been in Scientology?
Well, certainly. I mean, and so if you have something to say about this, I certainly want to hear it.
Well, absolutely. Scientology is the study of knowledge, Okay? We believe that man is a spiritual being and that he is seeking to survive.
Does he have BTs?
Oh, I don't know what you're talking
Body
about.
Satan?
You're just trying to make less of my religion. You hate
No, I'm just trying to
you
tell the
hate
truth
my,
about your
no,
religion.
you're a hater. I know.
No,
You were
Pat, I
outside
don't
my-
hate anyone.
you were
I don't hate
outside
you.
my church. You were outside my church for weeks on end, harassing
I worked in
and
Clearwater
yelling
for
and
2 years.
screaming. Oh, that's right, until your money ran out.
Well, let me try, both of you, if we can. I really want to know about the belief systems within Scientology.
Well, if
and
you
so,
give me just a moment.
Eric, let me tell you something. Scientology is about life. Now, it is about life. And there are, what we deal with, we help people to communicate better. We help people to handle their problems. We have courses and counseling that can teach a person how to live better and have better relationships in life.
Can they become OTs?
Absolutely, if they want to.
what is it? What is
well,
OT again?
When you throw a word like that out there, a person might not necessarily understand.
I'd be happy to explain it. Operating Phaeton. You can
Yeah,
control
well,
matter,
how can you
energy, space,
explain-
time.
How can you explain what you do not understand?
I
You
understand it
obviously don't
completely, Pat.
understand it because you hate it.
No, I don't hate it. I think that you are welcome to believe that you are covered with BTs and Xenu blew you up in the volcano.
You're
Just don't lie
trolling
about it.
that. Eric, here is the thing. I'm telling you, there are millions of people who've been helped with Scientology. When you can take a person and help them from, being a criminal and recognizing what they did was not correct and changing your lives and not going back to criminality, that is helping someone. And there are
Is there any
millions
aspect of
of these
space
stories.
opera or space aliens inside
I don't know what
Scientology?
you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about.
I do, Pat. Just answer me yes or no.
I don't know.
Is there
I don't
any
know what you're
aspect of space opera inside Scientology?
No. I'm talking
No,
about
well,
here and
if
now.
you will allow me, Eric,
No,
if you
I'm
don't
sorry.
mind, I
No,
would like to
Eric,
read
Eric,
you right from the Scientology website.
He is not an expert. He's a
But
religious.
I'm able to go to Scientology.org and read right from your website, Pat.
You're a bishop.
And if you will allow
What are you
me, I'm
talking
sure
about?
Eric would
What are
like
you
me
talking
to read
about?
right from the Scientology website.
Pat, how about we do this, and we will do a point and counterpoint on this. Pat, let him make this point, and I'll let you respond to it, okay? And again, if you agree or disagree, we'll have an opportunity to hear that.
Absolutely.
Eric, just so you know, I'm scheduled to speak tomorrow night with you, I think, at 5:00.
Ooh,
And I
that's all
really
in?
called in. I really called in order because he was going on and on about things that would make people, have an incorrect impression. The people that are in Scientology are some of the most intelligent people you're going to find. And you ask the question, why are so many people in Scientology? For Mr. Bunker to say, well, they're all just brainwashed is ridiculous.
Well, we can do one of two things, and I have you here, Pat, for at least another 15 minutes before my show is over. We can talk about this now, where we can respond back and forth, or if you don't want to, I can take the points that Mr. Bunker is making and let you respond to those tomorrow. But being here, it would be much more expedient to have Mr. Bunker make the points that he's going to make and have you be able to respond to that. Okay. Mr. Bunker, if there was something you were going to read.
Yeah, if I could just have just a moment here, uninterrupted, to read from Scientology's glossary. Space opera, of or relating to time periods on the whole track, millions of years ago. Now, the whole track are the incidents that make up your lifetime. Scientology believes that you've lived over and over and over, trillions of lifetimes, you're going to live trillions more. They believe in reincarnation. So when Hubbard's talking about incidents on the time track, here's what he has to say about space opera. It has space travel, spaceships, spacemen, intergalactic travel, wars, conflicts, other beings, civilizations and societies, and other planets and galaxies, as Hubbard liked to pronounce it. It is not fiction and concerns actual incidents and things that occurred on the track. Scientology believes in intergalactic space wars. They believe in Xenu blowing you up in a volcano. They just won't tell you the truth about it.
Well, and now, Pat, you would, I'm sure, like to respond to this.
Sure.
What is accurate or inaccurate in your assessment of what's been said?
Okay. The accuracy is Scientology is, yes, we deal in spiritual beings. We say you are a spiritual being.
Space
that you
opera,
are
yes.
seeking. I'm sorry, can I finish?
Yes, space
Thank
opera is
you.
what we're talking about.
Thank you. You are a spiritual being and you are seeking to survive, and you have lived lifetimes and will continue to live other lifetimes. That belief, by the way, is not only a Scientology belief, that Asian cultures have believed that for centuries. Okay? We say you have a body and you have a mind. Okay?
Okay.
And when he's talking about space opera, which he's taking out of context, that doesn't mean to say that everybody believes that or you have to believe that. Okay?
So you don't believe what Hubbard wrote?
Research.
You're not a
That is
believer in
from
L. Ron Hubbard?
Can you excuse me? May I finish,
Yes, you may.
Mr. Bunker? Thank you. Okay. What we're dealing with and what is important is what is here and now, and does Scientology help a person in the here and now? Okay?
Okay.
To understand yourself better, yes, you will understand your spirituality and you can move, onto greater and greater understanding of who you are if you can deal with your here and now and and your relationships in the present.
Okay.
That's what Scientology deals with every day.
And while on this point, it does touch into some of this. What to some of the claims that have been made? There was and I'm sure that this is a point that you have heard of before. Are there special powers, or what would seemingly be supernatural powers that one can attain through achievement in Scientology?
Well, let's put it this way. A person can become more perceptive by understanding your spirituality and understanding that you're not a body and you have a mind. You can become more perceptive. You will understand others better. Now, what is supernatural? That might be a subjective thing.
Okay.
That's not the point is that you're trying to improve the person's awareness of themselves as a spiritual being and improve their abilities.
Oh, and I asked this because one point that has been discussed recently in an unofficial or unapproved biography of Tom Cruise is that he believes he has achieved the power of levitation. Is that something that is subscribed? Okay.
That's ridiculous.
So no one achieves control over matter, energy, space, and time? That's not promised in Scientology?
There are no promises made in anything. People achieve what they achieve, and they recognize it for.
Well, one of the things that they're offered is the
Eric,
control
could I
of
just
math.
say something? Because we're taking it into this whole other realm, and the entire
The realm we
purpose
don't
of
want to
that,
talk about.
Eric, if I could.
Oh, if
The
you will both.
entire purpose of that, since I'm answering this point, and I really want to make this point.
Sure. In fact, Pat, I will let you make that point. We have news break coming up on us. It'll cut us all off in a second. But if you will hang in there, I will let both of you have another say on this. And Pat, I'll let you respond to this first up, okay?
Sure.
Thank you so much. And again, I have two guests with me, unexpectedly. The public relations officer for Scientology and Emmy Award-winning journalist and critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker, right here on the Eric Von Wade Show. It's 546. Good to have you back with us. It's 549, News Talk 1440 Keys. I tell you, something that I just recently discovered there was so much more to know about is Scientology. You're hearing a lot of people, very prominent people, subscribing to this religion. There's a lot of Hollywood actors and actresses. And so we, by circumstance in this situation, have two people, one pro-Scientology, the other a critic of Scientology with us. Emmy Award-winning journalist and critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker. Mark, thank you for being here with us.
Thanks, Eric.
And we also have Pat, and ma'am, you're going to have to tell me your last name again.
Harney, H-A, like the T.
Okay.
Harney, Harney. I'm the Public Affairs Director for the Church of Scientology in Clearwater.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Harney. And for you were going to respond to an issue just a moment ago about Scientology. And first, just to be clear, you have said in its defense that you've helped millions of people getting off drugs or staying out of crime and turning their lives around. And talking about the belief system in and of itself, that people can achieve what you say a higher degree of perception and supernatural powers that have been talked about is somewhat of a subjective term. It depends on what you consider supernatural.
Exactly.
What I'm just curious, the power to levitate has been something that's been thrown around as something that could be achieved through Scientology, and you're saying that that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. Here's the thing. Eric. We're talking about you as a spiritual being. That's what Scientology addresses. Okay, we believe man is a spiritual being and that he's seeking to survive, right?
Okay, yes.
And that in order to do that, you have to, you can help a person increase their awareness of themselves and of other people and help to strip away, to handle, to address, past upsets in their lives that might be holding them back. Okay. We're talking about a subject of 40 million words and 3,000 recorded lectures. So to try to
Some of which you should be tossing away.
To try to break it down into small little bites, right? It is a bit difficult. It's like
Understand. And I'm trying to go through some of the more controversial accusations and to get your side on this. So I may be jumping around a little bit. And tomorrow at 5:00 when I have you on, we will get into more of a from beginning to where we are now. Okay. But who is or what is this Lisa McPherson situation? Who is Lisa McPherson?
Lisa McPherson was a parishioner of the church, actually lived here in Clearwater, and she unfortunately died while here at the church. That was what happened, and she actually, died, and that's what happened. And then we had, some people who tried to exploit that to make the church look really bad.
And let me go to Mr. Bunker on this. Is this, as you understand, the circumstances that led to Lisa McPherson's death?
Well, Lisa McPherson was in Scientology, I believe, for 15 years, and she had contacted her mom and some friends back in Texas in late '95, saying, "I'm leaving the group. I'm coming home for Christmas, and I'm staying out of the group."
All of this has been gone over in the court cases. It's not true.
Right, and I let you talk, Pat. Let me share my information.
Thing, Eric.
Well, Pat, if you would, I'll let you respond in just a moment. Let him make the statements that he wants to make, and I will let you respond.
So after years of not talking to her folks, she says she's coming home. Then she gets into a minor traffic accident in Clearwater. And when the paramedics arrive at the scene of this bumper little accident, Lisa has stripped off all of her clothes and is walking down the street naked. And the paramedics say, "Why are you doing this?" And she says, "Because I need somebody to pay attention to me. I need help." And they took her to the Morton Plant Hospital a couple blocks away. And within an hour, 10 Scientologists showed up at the hospital and talked Lisa into signing herself out against the doctor's wishes. The Scientologists assured him that Lisa would be safe in their care. They took Lisa back to the Fort Harrison Hotel, a lavish hotel that they own in Clearwater, and they trapped her in her rooms and put her on baby watch. In those 17 days, she wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. She couldn't leave the room. She was going through a mental breakdown, and she lost 40 pounds in those 17 days. They were force-feeding her medication prescribed from an unlicensed doctor, and she died. By the time they put her into a van and drove her to a hospital, they didn't drive her to Morton Plant 2 blocks away. They drove her past 5 different hospitals to get where there was a Scientologist doctor working, and she was dead on arrival.
Now, Miss Harney, I want to hear what do you have to say about this.
That court case is over.
And her life is over.
And can I, Mark Bunker, you cared nothing about Lisa McPherson.
I care deeply about her and other Scientologists, including you, Pat.
No, yes, I really feel your love.
You don't right now, but someday you may. Okay. Someday you may leave the way Mike Rinder left, and you may start to appreciate the fact that people are talking out for your rights, saying you shouldn't lie, Pat. You should tell the truth.
Mr. Barker, let me hear a response from Ms. Harney on this. Ms. Harney?
That court case is over, okay? And actually, there was the court case is over. Any charges against the Church of Scientology was dropped. Okay, and the civil case that was charged afterwards is over. That's all I can say about it. For Mr. Bunker to continue to use this and ad nauseum, it's already been talked about in the press for many years.
And it will
And
continue
that's
to be
it.
talked about because
Right,
it's a
because
terrible
you
crime.
can use it to try to make me look less and make my religion look worse. You're a bigot.
Only when you lie about
You're
it.
a bigot.
Well, Miss Harney, let me ask you this: in your opinion, would you say that there were mistakes made or something wrong was done in that circumstance by those that were members of Scientology?
You know, it's difficult for me because I wasn't there to now look back and say, oh, X, Y, or Z. Other than I can say, yes, of course, things can always be improved and things can be better. And it's
Eric, can I tell you how
It's
Scientology
unfortunate. Can I
improved the
finish?
process?
Can I finish, Eric? Can I answer your question?
Let me let her finish, and I'll let you respond, Mr.
All right,
Bunker.
fine. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. This is what I'm asking, if we could please allow the woman to rest in peace.
Okay, and Miss Harney, I appreciate that. Mr. Bunker, you wanted to add something?
Here's what Scientology learned from the painful death of Lisa McPherson. They learned to put a Lisa clause in all of their release forms. When you now join Scientology, you have to sign a release saying that you give them the right to lock you up and keep you in their care. I'm trying to find the exact release form here. Here it is. It's a lengthy form, but it essentially absolves Scientology of anything that might happen to you while in their care. That's what they learned.
Was Miss Harney, was that added as a result of the Lisa McPherson
I'm
incident?
not sure what he's talking about. I'm not sure what Bunker is talking about at this point.
Well, let me.
Can I
It's
just point
the
out,
copyright
Eric,
2001
why-
CSS.
Eric,
So.
it's like a black person trying to defend themselves to the KKK. I mean, what am I doing here?
Well,
I would like to talk about. You had some questions, and we could look at it.
And you have an hour to do that
Passionately.
tomorrow.
certainly, and we will, and Miss Harney, I promise you will have an opportunity to get into more explanations about the other elements of Scientology tomorrow, and I know that we'll have an audience interested in tuning into that. But as it stands right now, I'm coming up at the top of the hour, and I look forward to talking with both of you again at greater length. And Ms. Harney, of course, tomorrow, 5 o'clock, we'll make room for you here on the Eric Von Wade Show. And Mr. Bunker, I want to thank you for your time and willingness to talk to us about these issues. Hopefully, I can call on you again.
Thanks anytime, Eric. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And Pat Harney, again, thank you for the call. I tell you, it is a fascinating subject. I am very interested in finding out more about all of this and getting both sides of the story, because that's what we generally enjoy doing here, and it's rare when I get an opportunity to have experts from both sides talking to me about a particular issue that I think so many people just don't understand. And I am one of those wanting to try and understand what is going on with Scientology. It's getting a lot of buzzword publication and press coverage, but not a lot of detailed information on it. And so this is an opportunity to find some things out. Make sure, tell your friends, be here 3 to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, tomorrow at 5 o'clock here on the Eric Von Wade Show. That's Wednesday. We're going to talk about this issue. I'm Eric Von Wade with News Talk 1440 Keys. It's 5:59. I am Eric Von Wade. Great to have you back with us. It's a big hour 3 this Wednesday, January the 23rd, 2008. And as I promised, we've been looking into a fascinating subject, one that you hear more and more buzz about in the media, in the news, and in Hollywood. It's the religion of Scientology, and what really is behind it. What are the belief systems? What is it about? And yesterday we had a chance to hear just a moment from Pat Harney, who is the public relations officer for the Church of Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida. And Pat, good to have you back with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me back. Hello, everybody. Hello, Margaret, and all the people who heard me yesterday, and hopefully they joined in today to get more data about Scientology.
Well, and I wanted to make it clear, and I let everybody know, I want to get all, opinions and both sides of this, and certainly I'm glad to have somebody that is involved to talk about it from their perspective. And, so Pat, some of the things I'll just tell you, that I want to know about, besides what you may be able to tell us that I hadn't anticipated. Mm-hmm. But, just how does one become a Scientologist? What are the belief systems of Scientology? We touched on a little bit of this yesterday, and certainly, it's talking about when was Scientology officially founded, or when did it become a religion?
Okay, the book Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health was published in 1950. And that was a book that dealt with the mind.
Okay.
As Mr. Hubbard developed his subject, he recognized that man is a spiritual being and the subject of Scientology was developed from that. The Church of Scientology was established in 1953 in Los Angeles.
Okay.
It wasn't established by L. Ron Hubbard. It was established by Scientologists or people using Scientology at the time.
Was it based on or built upon the book Dianetics?
Yes, it all stems from the book Dianetics.
Okay.
Which, for many people, over 22 million copies have been sold of the book since then. And it continues on bestseller list till today.
Okay.
And that book, like I said, deals with the mind, and in particular addresses the reactive mind, which is that portion of the mind that works on a stimulus-response basis, which is not under the volitional control of the person.
Okay. Okay. So would that be more of what people refer to as the subconscious?
Some people might call it the subconscious, but that, gives it a whole different connotation.
Okay.
In Scientology, in Dianetics in particular, the idea is to address that portion of the mind so it no longer exerts the force and power of command over your awareness so that you can, deal with situations totally on your own volition. And some people might recognize that. You ever find yourself doing things that you wonder, why did I do that? Or why am I in that relationship? Or what is that all about? Well, through Dianetics, you can address that and resolve those problems relating to the reactive mind. Okay.
Is there, as in a lot of world religions, there is a holy book or a Bible? Is Dianetics that book, or is there another work of writing?
Yeah, well, it's certainly one of the books. It's the first book, but we're talking about something like 275 books on the subject of Dianetics and Scientology, and about 40 million words on the subject, and 3,000 recorded lectures.
Okay. Now a lot of
that's our scripture. Sorry.
Certainly, and L. Ron Hubbard is he the primary? I mean, I have heard audio from him in the years past on speeches and so lectures that he's giving. Are those, is it simply his, or are there others who have given lectures as well?
No. Well, it's all his work.
Okay.
He is the founder of the subject of Dianetics and Scientology.
Okay. And that leads me to the next question. I think you touched on this just a little bit, but as, studying Islam or Christianity, there is I guess a process of discovery. Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad had the Archangel Gabriel, according to to the holy book there, had come and talked to him outside of his tent and gave him these instructions and instructed him on what to do. What process of discovery, or how did L. Ron Hubbard come into the knowledge that has been passed on and formulated as you know it today as the Church of Scientology? Well,
that is a very interesting question, because Mr. Hubbard will say, has said this, that he's just a man. What we recognize is that he's a genius. And he has said that his work is based on 50,000 years of thinking men. He did the research. He looked into, what the philosophers, what the scientists were saying. And he, did his experiment and his research and basically worked out the subject of Scientology to address what is man and what is creating the problems and how can we erase that.
Okay. So in essence, I mean, this is, to some degree, there's not a detailed process, but this was his, the general overall, this is the enlightenment that he developed through research and work of years and thinking, I guess, would be the way to describe it.
That's right. And, in a sense, there is enlightenment there. A person, as a spiritual being, looking at these things and, distilling the information into something that's usable.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking at, where he also had a very scientific approach to things. In other words, does this work?
Okay.
In the end, is this a workable thing? And that's what, people will tell you, Scientology works.
Well, and for a moment, and I know you touched on this yesterday, I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but if you could, I know that Scientology has an extensive amount of programs that are used to help people in business or relationships or other such things to get off drug addiction and criminal behavior. Tell me, if you could, shortly about that.
Well, there are a number of different campaigns and programs that the church is working on. Specifically, there are 5 key ones, and our anti-drug program is certainly well known. We have been working with people with drug problems since the 50s when Mr. Hubbard spoke out about, drugs and actually worked out how to get drugs out of the body.
Okay.
And that program, the Narconon program, is something that we sponsor. It's a drug-free rehabilitation program. It has an 80% success rate. There are 177 Narconon programs operating in 43 nations.
Okay.
And we have the other thing that the church supports is a literacy program. And that program we have also, again, all over the world for more than 3 decades. It's the Applied Scholastics Network. And we have something like about 98,000 teachers that are using this technology that Mr. Hubbard developed on how to improve literacy.
And that's the Applied Scholastics Network?
That's right.
Okay. And I think you said this yesterday as well, but to my understanding, you don't have to be a member of the Church of Scientology to go through these programs.
Exactly. And these are actually secular programs. They're available for use for anybody. In fact, they're all over the world in 12,000 schools. They're being used by teachers and people of all different faiths.
Well, and then that leads me to this, Pat. How does one become a Scientologist? What is required of you in order to be a member?
Okay, well, first of all, a person becomes a Scientologist. Usually, a person reads a book, or they have a very good friend who, talks to them about Scientology, and then they apply it, because Scientology is an applied religious philosophy. It's not a belief system. It's something that you apply the principles of, and you see for yourself whether or not it works.
Okay.
If I use the principles of communication, for example, will I be able to get my thoughts across to others, and will they be able to understand me and I understand them?
Okay.
For example.
So as far as that goes, it is simply a personal choice, is what you're telling me. To become a Scientologist is simply to declare yourself one because you believe what you have read.
What you've read and applied.
And applied.
It worked for you.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, and I was going to ask you this. I know we've got people who have questions, and we'll do that in a minute, but I wanted to ask some of these questions first. There has been talk of different levels of accomplishment within Scientology.
Yeah.
And how does that work? How many levels are there?
Okay, well, this is how it works, and I'll give you the overall embracing idea is we start out at a certain level of spiritual awareness about ourselves and how we're reacting with others and so forth, right?
Yes.
And we're trying to achieve a higher level of awareness, a higher level of spiritual ability. And the way we refer to the steps one takes to achieve that is what we call the bridge to total freedom. And those are the steps in Scientology that you take either through auditing or through training in Scientology courses, so you can learn the principles of life.
What does auditing mean?
Auditing is spiritual counseling.
Okay.
It is the Scientology spiritual counseling. It is an exact process or processes that, it's not a vague form of mental exploration. They're fundamental principles, and the individual uses this auditing technique to improve conditions.
Is the process something that's done with an instructor or by the individual self, or how does it work?
Well, auditing usually is done with another person, with a minister, a Scientology minister, who's called an auditor.
Okay.
And that person is trained to deliver Scientology counseling to someone else to help them in life's problems. For example, with communication, or somebody that's always having problems, or somebody who is continually upset by life. These are the kinds of things that we can gradiently improve in Scientology.
If you can hang in there for me with just a moment, we've got our bonus promotional materials we got to go to pay the bill.
Problem.
But, Pat, when we get back, I wanted to ask you this. How is it determined that, and one thing I hadn't heard yet, how many levels of achievement are there within Scientology? I'm going to ask you that.
Okay.
How does one determine when you advance to another level?
Yeah.
And something that was brought up yesterday, and I've heard this numerous times, that you're required to pay large amounts of money in order to advance, and I wanted to get your response on those 3 points, okay?
No problem.
Thank you so much, and we'll take calls in just a little bit, but I wanted to get some of these basics out of the way before we start asking questions, because I have no idea whether we'll get to the points I know I want to know about and that others do as well, the foundations and the beliefs of Scientology, how it works and how it's structured. We'll do more of this. You hang in there with me. I promise we'll get to other questions in just a little bit. We're talking with my special guest. She is a public relations officer for Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida, and we are talking with Pat, and we'll get back with more of that in just a moment, so hang in there. And we're talking about Scientology. We've got a special guest with us. We'll take questions in just a little bit. I know there's a lot of questions. This is a whole different realm for me. I had no idea there was so much to be learned. I have Pat with me here. Pat, I want to get the last name correct. I keep wanting to mispronounce it, I think.
It's Harney.
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 That's right, Harney. And I'll make that. I was saying Harney. Pat Harney, and she is the public relations officer for the Church of Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida. And Pat, right before the break, there were three things I wanted to find out about as we get to more interesting questions. But how many levels of achievement are there within the Church of Scientology?
Okay, there are several levels in terms of your auditing that one can achieve.
Okay.
You can go all the way up to clear, which is a person who no longer has his own reactive mind. Remember, we talked about the reactive mind as addressed in Dianetics, and there are certain levels that you go up before you get to clear, including, being able to handle communication.
Okay.
People do have problems with communication, being able to handle problems, being able to move out of the upsets of life, being able to make changes. And, those are different levels. And then after you've handled the problem of the mind, then you're moving into the spiritual realm and you're addressing more of the spiritual being and how to operate as a spiritual being. And the levels at that point are called, OT levels, which are operating Satan. And a Satan is a spiritual being. We use that word because it comes from the Greek word theta, which is life source.
Okay.
And it just differentiates it from other words that are used for spirit.
Okay. And this this is starting to fit together. I can see how this progression works. Yeah. Is there new information, because I think this has been said before, is there new information that's made available to you as you rise through the OT levels or on your way to clear, or is it simply just a new level of understanding on your own part?
It's a new level of understanding, and yes, you do get more information. And here is the thing, and this follows, other religions, for example. The idea is that as you progress in life, as you achieve more in life, as you increase your awareness and ability in life, you're able to, deal with more and more, spiritual things, and you can handle and address more spiritual matters.
Okay.
And, that is all that means.
It's like a spiritual maturity, if you will.
Exactly.
Okay, I can understand that concept. Yeah. And just out of curiosity, I had a caller earlier say he's listening, but he's going to be in class. And he wanted to know what spiritual level have you achieved, if indeed they exist, and I think we've gone through that already, that they do.
Yeah.
Are you at clear at this point, or?
Well, I'm not quite a clear yet, actually.
Okay.
But I have had a lot of training in Scientology, so there's the other aspect of it, the other aspect being knowledge and training, and I've achieved a lot of training in that. That side of the coin. Would
that be that's the OT realm, correct?
Well, no, OT deals with the auditing.
Okay.
And it specifically addresses auditing to the spiritual being. And then there's training in which you go to class and you have specific courses that you take in order to understand the principles of the spiritual being.
Okay. And this was another question that I'd had somebody send in earlier before we start going to the bones. Can you be, let's say, of another faith and also be a Scientologist? Could you be a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim and also be a Scientologist?
Yes, you can. And again, we're getting down to, you're dealing with individual people. And we don't dictate to a person how they should worship God. In fact, if I could just explain a little bit of something here, which is a principle of Scientology, which is the 8 dynamics of Scientology. And when we say a dynamic, we're talking about the urge towards existence. Okay. And we compartmentalize it into 8 compartments or dynamics. So we say that a being is seeking to survive. That's what you're trying to do. And when your urge towards existence on the first dynamic is an urge for your individuality, how you express yourself, how you want, the clothes you wear, your career, whatever. On the second dynamic is the urge towards existence is through the family, sex, and the raising of children. The third dynamic is the urge towards survival as for groups. And the fourth dynamic is for all of mankind, your urge towards existence as mankind. The fifth dynamic is as life forms, animals and trees. The sixth is what we call for the physical universe, the things you see around you, matter, energy, space, and time. The seventh dynamic is the spiritual dynamic. Other spiritual beings, your thoughts, your considerations, all of those fit into the seventh dynamic. And finally, the eighth dynamic, which is the God dynamic, which we describe as infinity. Okay?
Okay.
So all of those, we're each seeking to survive along those 8 dynamics. And how well a person does on each of those dynamics determines how happy they are, how, well they're surviving, that kind of thing. And so the goal of Scientology, of auditing, of training, is to improve one's survival along the dynamics.
And I'd tell you, Pat, in just a second, we got our news coming up on us, and I was going to let some people ask questions if I hadn't covered them. But one thing I hadn't hit on yet, does it cost money to go to advance in the levels of Scientology? And if so, how much and why?
Okay. So should I address that right now, or you want to go?
I'd tell you what, you probably wouldn't have time to do that. I'll let you do that, and we'll take calls first up after that, and let people ask their questions. So, Pat, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate you coming on to talk with us about this. The public relations officer from the Church of Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida. We're speaking with her, and it is Pat Harney. We'll let you ask your questions in just a second. I know a lot of you have been holding. You've got questions, obviously, that I haven't covered, but I wanted to get these basics clear. And so we, have something, at least for me anyway, to understand where we're coming from on this. And we'll do more of this in just a second. You hang in there. Scientology and a focus on that here on the Eric Von Wade Show. It's 5:30. Good to have you back with us. It is the Eric Von Wade Show, News Star 1440 Keys. We're going to grab questions in just a moment, so be patient. If you want to get in, you got a question, 560-KEYS. That's 361-560-KEYS. But in the meantime, a very special guest with me. We are talking with the public relations officer for the Church of Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida, Pat Harney. And Pat, thanks for hanging in there.
You're very welcome.
Right before the break, but I asked you this question, and this is something that has been touted or thrown around, that it costs money to move up through the quote-unquote levels of Scientology. Is this true? And if so, how much does it cost, and why is there a fee?
Okay. Well, congregational services in Scientology that are the same as those of other faiths require no donation, nor is any requested. Like Sunday services, graduations, weddings, funerals, naming services, and our holiday events with any kind of seminars or conferences, and we don't require a donation. Now, there are services within Scientology that we do request a donation. Unlike other religions that have been around for centuries, right? We don't have a centuries-old endowment, and we look to our parishioners for support. And that's our method of support. The training and the auditing services can range from extension courses that require a donation of $35 to training necessary to become an auditor, which I'll give you an example, an approximate 1-year course of study here at this organization, which is the highest level of organization here in Clearwater. We request a donation of about $13,000.
Okay, for a year's worth of study.
For a year's worth of study. That's full time. Okay. This is the other thing that, unlike, say the Christian church where you have one pastor who pastors maybe 500 people, we are very much a one-on-one religion where the auditing is one-on-one. So the auditor that you have that's been trained, we might have, here we have 1,400 staff.
Okay.
And we have something like 12,000 Scientologists in this area, and people come in all the time.
Okay. So they're basically, this is a way to pay the senior members of the church to do the things that they do, like auditing, as you explained earlier.
Exactly. And to, keep the lights on, to, expand the religion, to disseminate the religion, all of that is covered with parishioner donations. We have no outside donations at all.
Okay, so it doesn't cost to go up the levels. It's a donation that's asked for certain exercises like auditing or other processes that go on.
Yeah, well, going up the levels is auditing.
Okay.
So yes, you do. There is a fee for going up the levels.
Okay.
There is a donation for that. We call it a fixed donation.
And what is the cost of that?
Well, for like say it can range from $200 for a week of beginning dianetics to when you get further and further with more professional auditing, it can be thousands of dollars.
Okay. All right. Well, and that, I guess, explains that process. Pat, if you don't mind, if people have questions that want to know, we'll go to them, and I'll let you ask your question, and we'll listen to the response. My special guest again, the Public Relations Officer for the Church of Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida. And I believe first up we have Tori. Tori, good to have you on the Eric Von Wade Show.
Hey, thank you so much. Hi, Pat. This is Tori Crispin. I was in Scientology for 30 years. I did do up through OT7. I worked with PR for many years, and I have three very key questions for you. Number one, and please don't just say I'm an apostate and that's it. Number one, why do your organization, if they're so great, all the wonderful things you said that you do, and I'm not saying you don't do good things, because obviously you do, but why do you have to lie about people like me when we leave? You have 4 pages of flat-out lies about me, and not one person from your quote-unquote church will talk to me and find out the truth. Why do you have to break up families if people disagree with you? And, why do you stop free speech? I worked under the top executives, and they asked me to go out and open up phony accounts that they were using to stop free speech on the Internet. I want to know those things.
And, Tori, what is your name again?
Tori Crispin.
Tori Crispin. I mean, Pat, do you know this woman?
I personally don't know her, no. I have heard of Tori, though.
What?
I was in for 30 years, believe me. Type in my name in Google.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I got it correctly. Pat, what has happened in this situation, or what goes on? Is there, I guess, an ostracizing of people who were once in who leave?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know all of Tori's history or what the full extent of her situation. This is what I do know. That in Scientology, we bring families together, actually. There are people who, it's kind of like you're in a marriage and then you leave and you become acrimonious and bitter. And actually what I find, some of these guys who have left, and there are people who have left and they're fine with it, Many, many people have left Scientology and they're fine with it. And many, many people stay and love Scientology and use the services. Some people, however, go out of their way, not just to leave, but then to actually promote negative things about Scientology because they're bitter. And it's kind of like a divorcee. And they say things
broke
about
up my family. Yes, I am a little bitter about that.
I did not break up your family.
Scientology did.
Well, let me ask this specifically, Tori. What specifically happened to you? How did they break up your family?
Okay, they have a thing called disconnection. If you disagree with Scientology at all and ever speak out, they declare you a suppressive person. Everyone has to disconnect from you or they get declared a suppressive person.
So how did that, I guess your husband or your family didn't leave?
I was in a top secret little gang that was opening up these phony accounts in Scientology to stop free speech. I didn't want to do that. I said I didn't get into Scientology to do this. I don't think Pat got into Scientology to do that. But when I found out they were doing it, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I left. And because I left, and I wasn't even going to speak out, but they kept picking at me, and I finally said, fine, I have a voice too. And I did start speaking out. They declared me. Everyone disconnected from me. Many families have been broken up because of this disconnection policy.
And I'm guessing, though, that your husband, I'm sorry, Pat, I'll let you get in on this in a second, but what I'm trying to conclude is I'm assuming that your husband was a Scientologist as well, or the rest of your
born into it.
Okay.
He was born into it and thus stays in it.
Okay.
He's still in it.
And so your position is when they declared you a suppressive person, then he couldn't communicate with you anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're not allowed to.
If
they do, they'll be declared.
Okay. Pat, go ahead. I'll let you respond. I just wanted to get that part clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So the truth of the matter is that there are many, many ways to address one's grievances in Scientology. And I know that Tori knows this, okay? There are, her family made the decision for a reason. If you look at it, if her kids and her husband, are not speaking to her, then there's something else there that you and I
didn't
may
say
not
that I
know
said
about.
my husband, number one. Number two, what about the stopping of free speech on the net?
I don't know anything about that, Tori. That's ridiculous. I don't have any.
It isn't ridiculous.
I can't address something that I have no data on.
Okay, well, then you can go on the internet, which I know you can't.
Okay. Well, I think you had a chance to speak, so maybe I could.
I didn't have a chance. They didn't even give me a
No, I'm
comment.
saying right now, you just said something that I would like to address. If I could just have a free minute to just speak.
Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of like how we, deal with our ecclesiastical matters with regards to families, we have a method that a person can go through to address their grievances and handle something. If there's something that somebody feels someone else is doing that's incorrect, we also address that with ethics and Scientology.
No.
So, that's what I know. I know also that per the Way to Happiness, we do not commit illegal acts.
You lie all the time.
Okay.
Opening up phony accounts is not the way to happiness.
Well,
Now, when you say phony accounts, are you saying phony accounts on the internet?
On the internet.
Okay.
I don't know what that
they
is.
use
What she's talking about.
To spam. Various people are trying to talk about Scientology. If they don't want what is said, they go on it and spam it with these phony accounts.
Well, and when did you leave Scientology, Tori?
2000.
In 2000? Now, do you still believe in the principles of Scientology?
I think they're bottom level things which Pat has studied. There are some very good ones. I do think there's some mind control that is used as part of it. It's a lot like the Truman Shows, so it's very hard to get out. Right? You can't wake up. It's hard.
You're out.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're
Why
out.
can't any of my 30-year friends speak to me, Pat?
Come on, Tori, you're out.
Pat, why can't any of my 30-year friends speak to me?
I don't know. Maybe they don't want to.
No. I don't think so. Because I've talked to enough people who've left, and they said the same thing when they were in, and once they're out, they went, what a bunch of hogwash. Of course we wanted to talk to our friends.
For example, you're making some allegations right here, right now, that any Scientologist who understands ethics and understands Scientology knows that that's completely incorrect, what you're saying. So why would they want to speak with you?
Which part?
This thing that what you're talking about.
Which
you're
part?
You're saying, this thing about the phony account or whatever. You're making these allegations here.
I am not making that up. I agree you probably don't know about it, but people can go on to alt religion Scientology and watch it and see it.
Well, I know a lot about alt religion Scientology, and I can tell you that the people who sit around and put data about false information about Scientology on the internet, so other people can discriminate against my religion. That's not something that I want to.
Your church has 4 pages of flat-out lies about me up.
Okay. I don't think this is very.
Well, let me jump in here real quick and ask this question before we move on, Tori. And did you say you were in for 30 years? Did you reach the level of clear?
Yes, sir. I was OT7. I was like the top level is OT8.
I just from an outside perspective yesterday, and I'll allow Pat to respond to this as well. We had a critic of Scientology, Mark Bunker, who was saying that there is a belief system in an individual or an entity named Xenu.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that
correct?
And
that is correct.
And that there are particles or pieces of exploded alien souls that have attached themselves to the human beings?
That was Hubbard's belief.
Okay, and so did you go through a process to cleanse yourself of all of that to become clear? Okay.
I spent 7 years on their top level trying to get through it.
And you still, all these tenets of the faith are still things that you hold true, except you didn't like the ethics of what you were being asked to be involved with.
No, it doesn't have to do with ethics. I mean, it has to do with it doesn't work. It's like a triangle, and by the time I got to the top, first of all, her saying it only costs $13,000 a year, that may be for training, but for auditing, I was paying $7,000 every 12 and a half hours.
Excuse me, but Eric, if you remember, I did say it could cost thousands of dollars.
I know, and I'm just clarifying that was training. I'm talking about auditing.
I said that, Tori.
Okay.
Okay,
so I'm explaining it to him.
Is there? And let me ask this quickly before we have to move on to another call. Is there a way that Tori could do something to in order to communicate again with her friends or to be reunited with her family? I mean, do you still want to be with your husband and your children, Tori?
I'm not going to talk about my son, my husband. I would like to be in touch with. I would like to be in touch with my friends. She's going to say, yes, I can do this whole long thing that I have to go back and do. And no, I don't want to do that. It's basically crawling on your knees to get back in good communication with them. And no, I don't. But I'd like to talk to my friends and my husband. Sure.
Is there a process by which she could simply have communications with them without having to go through or jump through a bunch of hoops?
Well, let me explain something here. And we are dealing with the religion and our fundamental beliefs, which we share with other religions. If a person, right, has committed acts against something that they were a part of, that they agreed to, that they made certain agreements with, and then committed acts against that, they certainly have to address that as a spiritual being and as an ethical being. And that's how they could get back in communication with their friends and with others.
Right.
So,
I mean, that is our religious beliefs, and we hold it along with others.
First of all, let's get something clear.
If she doesn't want to do that, then she's made her choice.
Yeah.
She has made her choice just like they have made theirs.
Which is basically saying I can't.
I did not say that. And I said exactly what I said, and I'll stand by it. And you know what? There are a lot of people, Tori, also who have gone through it and done the process and gotten back in communication with their family.
Well, you already expelled me from Scientology. Scientology already said we don't even know who you are after I gave you over $200,000.
The door is always open, and that is the truth.
Okay, so have Joel Phillips call me and find out the other side of what he has posted on his website, all the lies about me.
I don't know who he is.
who is
Eric,
Nisotopes? And well, certainly.
On Scientology's Religious Freedom Watch site.
Okay, I tell you what, I will continue to look more into this, but just for the sake of time, I want to make sure that we allow some other people to ask questions. And Tori, thank you for the call, and Pat, thanks for answering some of these questions. And as always, there's going to be issues that are hard for people to understand. And it's just, my heart goes out to a woman who wants to communicate with her family and can't. And I understand that there are principles of the faith that the faith is going to adhere to. But I just, a mother not being able to talk to her children, it pulls at my heartstrings. And do we still have Pat? I think you put her on hold. Sorry, Pat. Yeah, go ahead. I accidentally put you on hold. But
I don't really think that Tori is being very sincere, quite honestly, because I'm telling you, there are many, many people who can avail themselves of the ethics of, our ethics technology and Scientology and have to come clean so they can be in communication with their friends. And she's made her choice. And there is a reason that you and I might not necessarily understand. Like, for example, a man and a woman decide to get married and they stay together. And then you think all is lovely. And next thing you know, they're at each other's throat. Right? Sure. For whatever reason, because somebody broke the agreement of that marriage. And, and the person who's scorned becomes very bitter. So there are things here that we might not necessarily know. Scientology brings families together. And I know this for a fact because I've talked to people who've repaired their marriages and handled their children, and they do this all the time.
Well, I tell you, I want to find out more. And Pat, can you hang in there with me just a little bit longer? Because I know the time is moving fast on us, and we've got to stop for some more bonus promotional materials. But I appreciate our special guest here on the Eric Von Wade Show this hour. We've been talking with the public relations officer for the Church of Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida. We have Pat Harney with us, and we have just been, exploring what belief systems they have and some of the elements of Scientology. Your calls are next, and certainly we'll find out as much as we can. We may have to do more than one show on this, because there's obviously a lot to know about this religion, and we'll do that in just a little bit. Good to have you back with us. 554 News Talk, 1440 Keys. It's the Eric Von Wade Show, and part of a continuing focus on a fascinating subject, the beliefs of Scientology. And we have a very special guest with us we're going to go right back to. We have Pat Harney. She is the public relations officer for the Church of Scientology out of Clearwater, Florida. And Pat, thanks for hanging around.
Yes, thank you very much. Eric, I was just thinking that since Mr. Bunker was on yesterday, and he had a good 24 hours to get his friends to call in, I'm hoping that the lines are not going to be loaded up with people like Tori Christman, who have an axe to grind on my religion.
Well, and again, I have no way of actually knowing that until we get there. But I tell you, I think again, there's an answer and response going back and forth that's beneficial.
I agree with you, and I'm gonna really try my best to answer as much as possible. And there is one thing, by the way, which Tori kind of brushed off, which does have to do with apostates. And religious experts have come out and said that apostates are bitter, and they do lie about the very group that they were in before.
Okay. And
So
let me ask you this. Now, this was something, and I know I'm taking up time for questioners, but there was something that Mark was talking about yesterday with a fair game policy, and his contention was that if you become a suppressive person, I may not be using all the right terms here, but if you're somebody who is overly critical or is deemed to be attacking Scientology, that you are considered fair game, and people can go after discrediting you or responding and attacking you. Is anything?
Yeah, that, and Mark Bunker knows this, and these guys know this. There was a policy called fair game that was canceled in the 1980s because it was totally misinterpreted. It was totally an internal thing where a person who is being unethical, okay, and who is attacking their religion inside the religion cannot therefore thereafter use our internal ethical procedures. They can't be protected with that. That policy was canceled back in the 80s because it was being misinterpreted as Mark Bunker is doing it today. Now, can we defend our religion? Can I say, oh yes, this person who is talking and telling you these things is lying because X, Y, and Z. I have that freedom. So every time I say something, then what someone like Mark Bunker will do is say, oh, they're practicing fair game. When in fact, what I'm doing is standing up for my religion. Just like I am with you right now talking.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. And of course, now my producer's letting me know this. I don't know if you want to do this, but Mark Bunker has called in, do you want to address him in a moment here?
Actually, I addressed him yesterday, and I know he had to say what he had to say, and he's going to, again, it's just going to get into this, point counterpoint, which might not necessarily be productive for your show. I have no problem actually addressing Mark Bunker. Like I said, he spent months with his video camera outside my door, harassing me every time I walked out the door.
The only reason I say this, and in trying to be a fair and balanced moderator in this, is I had not planned to give some of his time yesterday to you when you had called in, and today I've balanced out and looking at what time I've asked you questions and giving you an opportunity to answer. It maybe one question here, and then we could move on, because that's about all the time we'd have.
No, that he wants to ask me a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let me do that. And I believe we have Mark Bunker on the show with us. Mark?
Hi, thanks for having me on, Eric. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mark.
I wanted to bring up the Scientology policy of acceptable truth. If you Google Scientology and TRL, that stands for Training Routine Lie, in which they teach people how to tell an acceptable truth in Scientology. For instance, yesterday we were talking about
OT3 and Xenu blowing us up in volcanoes. And she said, I've been in this for years and I have never read any of that material. Well, now we find out today, well, no, she hasn't read any of that material because she isn't even clear yet. And she's not allowed to read that material. So she's telling you an acceptable truth when she says that she hasn't read that. That doesn't mean that it's not part of Scientology in those upper levels.
Okay, Mark, let me allow Pat to respond before we run out of time on this. Pat?
Okay, what he was doing was reading you a definition out of the technical dictionary, which I addressed. And it is true I am not at OT3, and it is true that we do have some confidential scriptures. And what is also true is that Mr. Bunker is not a Scientologist and therefore not an expert in the religion, and his only purpose is to denigrate my religion by bringing this up in this manner.
In essence, are you saying, and just to understand this, that there are things that you have promised not to talk about, and therefore you're trying to not discuss things you're not supposed to talk about?
Exactly. Our beliefs concerning the origins of this universe and mankind, we follow the tradition of the Eastern religion, which dates back to the Vedic hymns. You're in brotherhood with the universe, that your spiritual enlightenment is attained through knowledge of yourself, that you've lived lifetime after lifetime, and that is only through spiritual enlightenment that one can fully understand and comprehend the Creator.
Pat, I wished I had more time, but I appreciate that. I gave you the last word because this was your hour. We'll continue to talk more about this, and I hope both Mark Bunker and Pat Harney will be welcome to come back and talk again. This is the Eric Von Wade Show. It's 6 o'clock.